Good morning, everyone. I wasn't going to play this clip initially because I think this is going to be a long show. I could be wrong. Watch it be 15 minutes. That'd be funny. But I listened to this clip, and this is as definitive an answer as I have ever heard from the finance minister. Ever. I don't think I've ever heard a more straightforward answer. This is on the home equity tax. This is on, are you looking at putting a tax on our principal residence? And will you commit to no taxes in the future? And he says, yeah, we're not looking at doing this, and we're not going to do this in the future. Wild. Here we go.
The CMHC study is looking at a home equity tax. So will the government end this charade and commit to no new tax, no tax hikes on principal residences of homeowners?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I want to thank the member for that question. I want to be very clear. This is not something that this government is considering. We are not looking at tax changes on principal residences. That is not something that we're looking into, and we will not be considering that in the future.
So, wow. A straightforward answer on the equity thing. I was speculating yesterday that maybe it would be the fact that they're not talking about it yet that's factually accurate. But, I mean, Morneau goes as far as to say they're not looking at doing it in the future. So, if you're looking for straightforward, clear answers, that was one. So, I don't know why they decided to start answering questions, but that was one question that they're very clear on. Maybe they got a big backlash and they were like, nope, walk away from it. Because they did spend $250,000 to study this. So anyway, interesting. Here is an update from another of yesterday's stories. This is Black Lives Matter Toronto is raising concerns about why and how 3 protesters were detained after 3 statues were defaced during a protest over the weekend. And I thought that the comments on this, and there's a 680 News, there's a City TV News. City TV News and 680 News, they copy each other. They're the same, they're basically the same Twitter feed. I don't know why. And they have different reporters referenced, but they put out the same material. And it's interesting, the comments on this feed. It's all basically like, the reason they were detained is because they were defacing property. We still have laws. But I think it's interesting that the news is trying to gaslight us into thinking that if you protest for something that they agree with, then laws don't apply to you. But that Mr. Gooch guy, he's a teacher of the Toronto District School Board, and if he is proven guilty, him doing this and getting that criminal charge should impact his teaching career, and not because I'm complaining about it, and not because other people have seen it and are complaining about it, but because you can't maintain your teaching license if you have a criminal, if you have a criminal charge. And I believe that you have to update your police check every year. So, I mean, I think that this is interesting. 680 News, right? Will 680 News stop talking about traffic accidents if it's a certain demographic now because that's racist? I mean, this is where we're heading. Fast. The news is all on board. That's what they want. Yesterday, Justin Trudeau called an emergency, it would seem to be an emergency recall of the House of Commons. There was a schedule for Wednesday. This Wednesday was supposed to be the sitting to pass the measures that were supposed to be passed and whatever that was set up. Justin Trudeau recalled Parliament on Saturday, and then he didn't show up yesterday. I thought that maybe some fireworks were going to go off. It was the biggest nothing burger of nothing burgers, really. There wasn't really a whole lot that went on. Here's Cian Bexton. He says, today's strange last-minute session was called by Justin Trudeau and his speaker 2 days ago on a Saturday. Trudeau told 337 people from across the country that they had to drop everything and attend Parliament. Trudeau lives 5 minutes away, and he took the day off. Who does that? Dick, right? Really, seriously? Here is Andrew Scheer saying, is everything okay? What is wrong with our Prime Minister? Is everything okay? And what is wrong being is he ill? Does he understand that Parliament's in session? That he called Parliament back? Here's Andrew Scheer.
Mr. Speaker, June 10th was the last time the House of Commons met to deal with the legislation that we've been summoned back for today. In the meantime, the Prime Minister has been rocked by a $900 million scandal in which he gave a sole source contract to an organization that paid his immediate family members hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, the Prime Minister could have picked any day to summon members of Parliament back to work, but on his website it says that he's taking, quote, a personal day. I guess he needed another long weekend. Why is the Prime Minister taking a personal day? And I'd like to ask the Deputy Prime Minister, is everything okay?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Mr. Speaker, thank you for that question. As Deputy Prime Minister, part of my job is to be accountable to this chamber when the Prime Minister is not here. It's a privilege for me to answer questions on behalf of the government from members on the other side of the House. And I'm very happy to answer any questions the opposition has today.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Au revoir, Monsieur le Président.
Okay, so that's the end of that interaction. She didn't answer the question. Is Trudeau... Where's Trudeau? Is everything okay? I love answering questions. Questions are my favorite. I mean, how is that serious? Like, this is seriously the answer to this question. And, I mean, I guess it's not an answerable question because maybe her whole job is to just cover for Justin Trudeau, right? Speaking of that $900 million wee scandal thing that was rocking the Liberals, I've got 3 in-depth wee stories to go through, and then more. Like, this whole wee thing is just, like I said before, this is an easy to understand scandal that just keeps getting deeper, and the finances of it are interesting. The reason I'm highlighting this story is because before it was 43.5 million. Brian Lilly's reporting 43.5 million. That was the report from the other day that I reported on. This says over 50 million. Okay. It also references the 43.5 million in Lilly's report. And it's down here where it does. Yeah. But it's interesting that in the top here, it talks about 50 million. So, and says over 50 million. So maybe it's talking about all the liability or all of the debts, all of the assets, the liquid liabilities, and it outlines it in the article. I'll get to it. But that's the reason I'm highlighting this, because it's interesting to note how differently different news organizations report things, even finances, even numbers, right? Like there's dissent on the numbers, right? Well, if you include this and don't include that, and if you look at it this way, and if you just look at how females think about it, right? Or how this population or that population, it's so insidious, right? It plays with, you can make statistics say anything, right? Find a population that agrees with you and over-represent that population and get the poll that you want. Okay, anyway, regardless, I'm going off on a tangent. National Post is reporting, and this is July 20th. Today is July 21st. Property brothers Kielburgers facing scrutiny over WE Organization's $50 million real estate empire. The WE Organization, at the center of a major federal government controversy, was founded 25 years ago by the Kielburger brothers, Mark and Craig. On the surface, it appears that the charity, one of the largest international development organizations in the country, successfully built a global initiative that quickly began attracting millions in donations and support from top celebrities and politicians, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Finance Minister Bill Morneau. But both Trudeau and Morneau are now facing questions about awarding a $900 million student volunteer contract to WE's charity arm, despite being linked through family to WE. While the contract was cancelled when uncomfortable questions were raised about political conflicts of interest among senior Liberals, it has provoked interest not just in the government's decision, but in the WE organization as well, given Trudeau's claims that WE was the only organization capable of fulfilling what he intended for the contract to achieve. I scroll down a little bit. Over the last 5 years, WE International Developed Empire has cumulatively amassed over $50 million in real estate spread across more than 10 different commercial properties in Toronto's East End. Purchase prices from property records indicate. So I don't understand how they can say $50 million in real estate. Like real estate, hard real estate? Okay, it's just weird, right? Okay, noted. Scrolling down. The statement that the money to buy property came from donors who made, quote, targeted donations. 100% of WE charity property purchases are fully funded by targeted donations from long-standing supporters of the charity. That's interesting, right? Because that could describe their parents, right? The Kielburger parents. The Kielburger parents owned a building and donated $100,000 a year in rent to the WE Foundation. So, maybe those are the targeted donations. Hey, son, if we donate a couple $1 million, do you want to buy property under WE's banner downtown Queen Street? I'm not sure how I see how helping impoverished children in foreign countries fits into this piece of pie, but this seems to This seems to be very, very specific language to me. Okay, back to the article. So the statement, no restricted program funds, no monies from youth fundraising, nor funds that would have otherwise been used for youth service programs have ever been used to purchase property for We Charity or any other We-related entity, is the statement added. I scroll down further. As of August 31st, 2019, We Charity had $62 million in assets. $43 million of that was in the form of land and buildings, and approximately $9 million was in marketable securities, which are investments that can be easily liquidated. We Charity's revenue for 2019 fiscal year was $65.9 million. Now, I'm not a finance guy. I don't know... not that I don't know the stock market or anything to that effect, but I'm not experienced necessarily in end-of-year spreadsheets and all of this other stuff. But it doesn't seem like the $9 million in marketable securities counts as real estate. And this is 2019 numbers, and it's counting 43 million. So are they saying that there was 7 million more in hard real estate from 2019 to now? I'm not sure exactly where they're getting the numbers from. I wish that there was a link. I'm not sure. Usually isn't references in news articles like this, but regardless. Anyway, back to this. It's mealy, right? There's so much data almost it's unmanageable without being able to say, okay, this is where this starts and this is how much it is, and this is where this starts and this is how much it is. Because without all that, like a spreadsheet, right? Figuring out who's paying for what and why it enriches and who benefits from it, right? Follow the money, as everybody's saying. Follow the money. Back to this. World Vision Canada, for example. Okay, as of August 31st. Okay, so I'll finish this. Marketable securities, which can be easily liquidated. So to remind you, We's charity revenue for the 2019 fiscal year was $65.9 million. Some of the biggest names in international development own either no real estate or significantly less than We Charity, Canada Revenue Agency filings show. World Vision Canada, for example, which spent $362 million in charitable work outside of Canada, owns roughly $18 million in land and buildings. Plan International Canada owns no real estate. We Charity, by contrast, spent $19 million in charitable work outside of Canada in 2018 and owns more than double that amount of real estate. So that's a comparison, right? So 19 million in charitable work versus 362 million, 18 million in real estate holdings versus 50 million. So say 43 million, whatever it is. We's statement, back to the article, noted that other Canadian nonprofits and social purpose mission organizations own substantially more real estate than We Charity and Me to We combined, citing, for example, the Salvation Army of Canada owns almost $100 million dollars worth of real estate. So it's interesting they're saying it's not just us; those guys do it too. On January, are the Kielburgers bankrolling that, or is that somebody else? On January 5th, 2019, a numbered company, back to the article, registered to Fred and Teresa Kielburger, sold a property at 329 Queen Street East to Me to We Foundation for $2.6 million. Months after that transaction was completed, Me to We Foundation took out a mortgage on the property for $800,000. Property records show. We confirmed to the Post that the initial purchase of 329 Queen Street East was done by Fred and Teresa Kielburger at the request of Me to We Foundation, since the organization, quote, did not have sufficient funds at the time. Months later, Fred and Teresa Kielburger sold the property to the foundation at the same price at which it was purchased, $2.6 million, and covered the closing costs on behalf of the foundation. Isn't that nice of them? Fred and Teresa Kielburger lost $130,000 on the transaction, and they kindly elected to cover all related costs, including land transfer taxes, we said. Interesting, isn't it? Here's Brian Lilly, and this was published yesterday as well. And this is another real estate-centered article focusing on two different people, unrelated, named Lee. Mingzi. I'm going to call them Mingzi. I don't know if it's male or female. Okay, here. It's by Brian Lilly again. We flips for real estate. And Mingzi Lee was a 21-year-old student at the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Business. Unlike most students at the U of T, even business students, Lee had just bought a property worth more than $1 million. In December 2015, Lee would buy another expensive property. This time, he paid just shy of the $1 million mark, $995,000 for a red brick 3-story semi-detached home on a leafy street in Toronto's Cabbagetown. Both properties were bought from different parts of the real estate portfolio controlled by Craig and Mark Kielburger and the charity and business complex they have built over the years. The first property at 212 Carleton Street was purchased from Kiel Projects Incorporated, one of the many companies set up over the years by the Kielburger brothers. The second was purchased from Feed Free the Children, not Feed the Children, excuse me, the charity now called We. We is where Lee worked, first helping with projects in China and then in the finance department with Victor Lee, We's CFO. Although Mingzi Lee and Victor Lee are not related, Mingzi Lee is a relative of one of Victor's close friends and former university student Victor promised close friends from university, and Victor promised to look out for Mingzi in Canada. Mingzi even listed Victor's home address as his own on real estate documents. Victor Lee has worked closely with the Kielburger brothers for years, looking after the money at We, and according to public real estate documents, Lee and his family have done many deals with the Kielburgers in the real estate realm. What is interesting about the purchases by Mingzi Lee is that 212 Carlton was purchased for $1.05 million with no mortgage recorded with the Land Registry Office. Unusual for a 21-year-old student, it is also unusual that both properties were purchased at significantly below what their municipally assessed value would be pegged at on January 1st, 2016, immediately after the sale. Normally, homes sell above the assessed value, which is mostly used as a factor when determining municipal tax bills. It's one of the many reasons that several real estate professionals consulted for this story describe these and other transactions as odd or strange. One accountant who was asked to review documents related to these and other sales said questions do arise out of what is public, but added more background documents would be required to know if these transactions were more than simply strange. Another oddity in the Kielburger We real estate world is how often properties trade hands among family members and insiders. The home at 212 Carlton was sold by Mingzi Lee to Yutan Ki, another We employee. And again, that just kind of rhymed, right? And again, it sold more than $250,000 below the assessed value. The family has traded some pieces of real estate multiple times before, transferring them to numbered companies for what is recorded as $0 transaction. Roxanne Joyal, CEO of Me to We, and also wife to Mark Kielburger, owned 1792 Lakeshore Boulevard East, which overlooks Woodbine Beach for 7 years, starting in 2007. She sold it to Victor Lee and his wife in 2014 for $1.56 million. Lee sold it to Fred and Teresa Kielburger in 2016 for $1.62 million. In November 2018, the Kielburgers transferred the property to a numbered company owned by Kelly Holland, Craig Kielburger's mother-in-law, for $0. The home is assessed at more than $1.7 million. They did the same thing with 48 Meadowcliff Drive. I scroll down. We often see transfers from mothers to a son, said one prominent realtor, describing how family transfers, even for low dollar amounts, are not uncommon, but I've never seen anything like this in my 25 years in real estate. I did ask the Kielburger, Lee, and We organizations to comment on this story and answer specific questions about the transactions. They initially said they needed 48 hours to provide a comment and describe the questions of trading oddities as technical in nature. The questions were not technical nor overly complex, and definitely not as complex as the real estate world the Kielburger and Lee families operate in. Through a spokesperson, the Kielburgers said that most of the real estate transactions have nothing to do with We and are personal to their family. Oh, that's not We business. That's just personal business. Interesting, right? Back to the article, while some may argue that this is all their private business, the fact that much of their real estate often involves charities or businesses affiliated with those charities makes this very much of the public interest. Right, and they use the same play with the We charities that they did with their personal real estate holdings. Notable. Here's moving into the We scandal, changing gears a little bit, but still in the same realm. Paying volunteers, students less than minimum wage was federal government's idea, says We Charity. Throwing them right under the bus. As the Commons Finance Committee prepares for more testimony on the controversial Canada Student Service Grant, We Charity says one of the more contentious aspects of the program's design, paying students less than minimum wage for their hours of work, was the federal government's idea. With only about 6 weeks left before their return to full-time studies, some students now say they want the federal government to scrap the stalled $900 million volunteer compensation scheme and redirect the funding towards financial assistance for post-secondary students and recent grads. CBC News asked We Charity whether organizations that supervise volunteers could decide on their own to adjust how the how they counted their volunteer hours if they were concerned about students not being paid fairly. Quote, the Government of Canada determined the compensation per hour of service for the CSSG, and We Charity was contracted to administer CSSG according to that decision, We Charity told CBC News. I scroll down a bit. Gina Wilson, Chegar's Senior Associate Deputy Minister, said that in a partnership agreement like the one it had with the We organization, the government sets performance measures and audits the results, but, quote, does not direct or dictate how the recipient will carry out the project. Contribution agreements lay out the funding and broad policy objectives. The desired result, then it is for the third party to make decisions about how they achieve those results. Rachel Wernick, a Senior Assistant Deputy Minister at Employment and Social Development Canada, told the committee. Nevertheless, We Charity was not in charge of designing how the program would compensate students. Things like the value of the grant or how students would be required to volunteer were decided upon by the government, Chegar's office told CBC News Monday. We's administrative role involved in getting students to sign up and recruiting organizations to supervise them. NDP ethics critic Charlie Angus asked Chegar during her committee testimony last week if her office sought a legal opinion about having students do work that pays less than minimum wage, something he suggested could have raised red flags because it might not be legal and could leave charities liable. Quote, I'm confident the public service would have done their due diligence and would have requested legal opinions, the minister said, after Angus accused her of throwing civil servants, quote, under the bus. Angus later asked Wernick if her department sought legal opinion. Quote, I need to clarify that this was a lump sum financial award like a bursary at the end of summer. It was not an hourly wage, and that was the nature of the grant, Wernick said. Rewards are like that, like air miles. You have to reach certain levels before you get a reward, Wernick said, later adding she could not talk about the government's legal advice because it would, quote, constitute advice to ministers and solicitor-client privilege. Paula Spivak, the president and CEO of Volunteer Canada, told the committee that in late April, she met with senior officials from Chegar's office and shared concerns expressed by her member organizations about, quote, paying an hourly rate for community service that is below the minimum wage and calling this volunteering. This could create the wrong message about volunteering and potentially undermine volunteer engagement in the future, said Spivak. There's also issues related to insurance, confusion about whether someone is covered as a volunteer or as an employee and how that works, because of its national network of volunteer centers and its expertise in volunteer engagement. Volunteer Canada was offered $100,000 to subcontract as a strategic partner under We Charity, Spivak said. It declined. I thought it was funny how it was just kind of like, they said no. Interesting, Ms. Chegar forgot to mention that she had a meeting with Craig Kielburger a few days before the rollout of the CSSG. Here it is from the Welland Tribune, which is, I guess, Star from a group of Toronto Star newspapers. Liberal Minister Barty Chegar met with We Charity days before student program was announced by Trudeau. The Liberal minister responsible for the Canada Student Service Grant program met with the We Charity almost a week before the $912 million COVID-19 student volunteer program was announced, the Star has learned. Barty Chegar's office confirmed Monday the youth minister spoke to We co-founder Craig Kielburger on April 17th, 5 days before Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the creation of the volunteer grant program, a program designed to help students impacted by the pandemic. Chegar's office said the minister and Kielburger did not discuss the Liberals' plans for a volunteering grant program during the phone call. Instead, the two discussed We's pitch to create a social entrepreneurship program for young Canadians during COVID-19. Our office reviewed We's social entrepreneurship pitch in early April, and this phone call was in reference to that, and it didn't go anywhere, said Danny Keenan, a spokesperson for Chegar on Monday. Chegar did not mention the meeting with Kielburger Thursday while testifying before the House of Commons Finance Committee. The committee is probing the Liberal Cabinet's decision to outsource the volunteer grant program to We, a decision that has seen Federal Ethics Commissioner Mario Dion launch investigations of Trudeau and Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Asked if she discussed the grant program with We before the cabinet discussion, Chegar said, I did not discuss the program, the CSSG program, with anyone at We. No, but her deputy minister is Rachel Wernick and has direct ties to the Privy Council through her brother, former clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Wernick. So that is probably a factually accurate statement. She didn't talk to anybody in We or anything to that effect, or in the Prime Minister's office, right? Because Ms. Wernick did a lot of that. Back to this. In 2012, the Kielburger brothers attacked Stephen Harper on national television. They have repeatedly assured Canadians that we have no political orientation. Sure, we're not political at all. Scheer says Liberal MPs signaling they're okay with corruption if they don't demand Trudeau's resignation. I just wanted to put that in there. I think that it's interesting. Yeah, there are a lot of Liberal backbenchers who could say something. They're not. Here's a report from this. Last night, this morning. Trudeau will appear in the House to answer questions about we after not coming to meeting on Monday. Justin Trudeau will face opposition parties in the House of Commons on Tuesday for the first time since financial ties between his family and the We Charity were revealed, and since Ottawa has said that it awarded a contract to the group without a competitive process. Mr. Trudeau will be in question period after criticism from the opposition that he took a personal day rather than attending Monday's meeting, which was called by his government. He will answer opposition questions in the House, but has yet to say whether he will accept an invitation to testify at the Finance Committee's probe into the now cancelled contract. On Tuesday, the committee will hear from Canada's top public servants, Ian Shugart, when it resumes hearing into the government's arrangement with We Charity. And next Tuesday, We Charity co-founders Craig and Mark Kielburger will also speak to the committee. That's going to be interesting. Since Mr. Trudeau last appeared in the House of Commons on July 8th, revelations from We Charity, the Trudeau government, and civil servants have shown that the connections between the Liberals and the charity were deeper than previously known. In addition, the charity stood to be paid more than double what the Liberals first disclosed, from at least $19.5 million to as much as $43.5 million, which is like almost their entire operating budget for a year, right? Like that, their yearly budget in 2019, I believe, was $65 million. So, I mean, that's a lot of extra money, right? Here's another interesting tidbit. The Toronto District School Board is planning a review and evaluation of We Charity's involvement in their schools. That's interesting. Did you know there's a Craig Kielburger secondary school? Did you know? It's in Halton District School Board. Yep. And here's the address and all that stuff because it's a school, right? That's how it looks. Very interesting, right? Yeah. Craig Kielburger Secondary School, CK. Wow, right? I wonder how long that'll stay named that. Here is somebody keeping track of Justin Trudeau's personal days. He's got 35 personal, 35 private, 8 days retreating, and 70 days hiding in the cottage. Here is Ahmed Hassan, Liberals review rollout of social finance fund to combat pandemic fallout. This is a fund to fund charities with our tax dollars. And not only that, fund charities for running experiments on us. Really, like social experiments. I think this is a terrible idea. The federal government, I don't even know how long I'm at. 27 minutes. Oh my goodness. Okay, I've got lots. Still lots. I'm going to just stop maybe. I've lost my mouse too. There it is. Hold on, I'll check and see how much we've got. Oh, yeah, I've got a whole lot. Condos and all sorts of stuff. Well, I guess that's another show. I'm going to stop here. This is not a great idea. This is not a great idea at all. Link is in the description. Usually I finish my show a lot better than this. The Ontario government is planning on the emergency bill. They're extending the emergency powers, but not extending the emergency. I think it's a terrible, awful, ridiculous idea. John Tory wants mandatory masks in common places in condo buildings and apartments. Again, this is not backed up by any kind of science that I'm aware of. And they definitely want to censor the release of all records on public health agencies' mismanagement of the pandemic. Liberal and Bloc Québécois vote no. It's a 5-6 vote. And unbelievable. 6-5, right? 6-5 vote to censor the records on the public health agency. Just awful. This government is terrible, and it is damaging, and it is not. This is a naked power grab from the provincial level. Never mind the federal trash that's going on. Okay, this was a long show. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. I was supposed to be recording today, but I have a meeting that was scheduled, and I forgot about it, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm hopefully going to be recording another Speaking Moistly tomorrow. And thanks for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.